Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Final Trade. A patron had pointed out to me that I had not shared collector box performance data with you guys since last July, so I'd been trying to do this every 6 months and I just missed it a few months ago when that was coming around again. So I've updated all the prices and added all the new collector boxes we've recently gotten. Now, what I'm plotting here is CAGR, it's compound annual growth rate, and of course that is the percentage that it has gone up for each year it's been in existence. And so I make some pretty harsh conservative assumptions here. I assume you had to buy these on release day and you had to pay the wholesale price. And the reason that's kind of conservative is these last couple of years we've bought most Magic below wholesale. Not all, but significantly most of it. Now I've gone out and I've just taken the market price today off of TCG Player and I've computed what is the percent per year compounding that it's gone up, the compound annual growth rate. And of course, I'll always warn you guys that compound annual growth rate on short time scales gets very wonky. And of course, you can see that down here with Fallout. So Fallout was priced at wholesale originally like a standard set. And then it's more than doubled, but it's more than doubled since it was released only 19 days ago. And so a CAGR calculation is going to say, well, if it more than doubles every 19 days, what will the total performance look like at the end of 1 year? And so, of course, you get this crazy number. And no, we don't expect that Fallout will consume all the economic activity of the entire world. And also, we don't assume that Murders at Karlov Manor will be down 83%. It's gone down about 25%, but it's done that in a couple of months. So that's why some of these later ones have very outsized numbers, and that's why I haven't included them on the plot over here, is because it's not entirely helpful. Now, I made the cutoff after March of the Machine, which of course means that I've left off Lord of the Rings that's gone up 76%. Now, I don't expect Lord of the Rings to appreciate 76% every year from now on. That's better than even the wildest of Pokemon boxes. The highest outlier Pokemon boxes don't gain 76% per year. And I don't think the original Lord of the Ring collector boxes will either. But they've seen very good growth since they were released last summer. That will moderate over time. And I expect on the long timeline, Lord of the Rings collector boxes will see somewhere between, say, 20 and 25%. If I had to place a bet in that narrow as a 5% range, I'd say 20 to 25%. But what can we kind of draw as conclusions for this? And of course, in previous versions of this video in the past, I've talked about how it always feels like we've had different eras of collector boxes. Like we had an early era when WotC was still trying to figure out print runs and what the market would absorb and how to add value to them. And they were kind of getting some things right because they were doing things like the Mystical Archives in Strixhaven, the box toppers in Zendikar Rising. Commander Legends, of course, famously had low print runs. The green bars here are non-standard sets, and the blue are standard, or in the case of Unfinity, priced as standard. And so there were a lot of reasons that these early collector boxes did really well. And then we kind of got to the printed to oblivion era. And of course, Strixhaven kind of straddles that line. You know, Strixhaven, when you look at the set and draft box data that I showed a couple days ago, you can see that those are still in the dumps, price-wise. But the collector boxes are doing very well. Well, it's because of the Mystical Archive cards and the gorgeous artwork on some and the premium that people will pay for them. And so that's why Strixhaven kind of sits here in between the early era where there was a lot of value in the boxes and this kind of mid era where the print runs were super high. And then, of course, we get into some problematic sets like AFR and Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow, all three that are just kind of considered weak ho-hum sets. Then we come into Kamigawa, where we had the Hidetsugu Neon Parallel Chase cards that helped keep that price very high. And there was a time, about a year ago, when this had gone down into the 170s, which compared to the original wholesale price in, 175 or so, 180 it would have been, it would be negative on the compound annual growth rate. But it's recovered pretty nicely since last summer. And then we might say that we're starting to get into a third era where WotC remembers how to put value in it. And maybe we would say that this began with Phyrexia. And of course, I've only plotted a couple of those sets over here on the chart. But when you look at the numbers here and you see that most of them are green on the CAGR column, they've been doing really well. They've been doing much better than historically. And so even sets like Phyrexia that did not have serialized cards and the oil slick cards were not in the collector boxes, it's done really well. Wilds of Eldraine did not have serialized cards. It had confetti foil, but people just kind of don't go crazy for that kind of stuff. Certainly a good analog would be Streets of New Capenna with the gilded foils. Nobody really cares about those. So it's interesting to see. It's as if WotC has kind of figured out, one, how do you put value in these boxes? Maybe not every time, but how can we have some gimmicks that we rotate through the various collector boxes over time in order to put value in them? And then two, how do we control the print runs? How do we rein in the print runs a bit and then maybe balance that against the value so that people are still willing to pay it? And of course, something like Ravnica Remastered and Lost Caverns of Ixalan collector boxes are kind of the poster child for having done that correctly. And hopefully WotC can get the feedback from that this year, use it going forward, and really make collector boxes through the rest of 2024 and beyond good, valuable items that are actually collector items. Now, we should talk about those kind of mid-era boxes that are still negative. I don't think they're all going to stay negative forever. And of course, the whole history of TCG investing is that on the long timeline, things like this go up in price. And while I think that stuff like AFR, Midnight Hunt, Crimson Vow, I think those could stay negative for quite a while longer. They're going to rotate out of standard, or AFR already has, but Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow have not. They'll rotate out of standard this September of 2024, at which point the value of the singles in the boxes will fall even more. And they may have a long time to consolidate and start moving up. And certainly AFR is proof of that because it's already been rotated out of standard for 18 months and it still has a negative overall return. Now, I think Kaldheim is in that sweet spot. I think Kaldheim is going to really surprise people. It may be 2024. It may take longer if we don't have a strong, decisive bull market in Magic in 2024. But I think the next time that we do, Kaldheim is really going to surprise people. Because again, if you go back to the video I made several days ago and you look at the set and draft box performance of Kaldheim, it stands out in its era amongst other standard expansions. And so the set and the draft boxes have done really well compared to the other sets around that time. And yet the collector box is doing the worst in that whole area. It's the only one that's negative in this whole early era of collector boxes. And so I think that's going to surprise people. And you can still get them today. I believe 130s, 140s is where the prices are. Maybe it's moved up to 150s now. But I think it's really going to surprise people the next time we get into a strong bull market and there's more money pouring into Magic and specifically for Magic investing. So if you don't have any of those, you should probably think about picking some up at some point while they're still cheap. Being the oldest collector box that is still overall negative is interesting in and of itself, but then when you compare it with its corresponding set and draft box performance, it definitely looks out of family. So I think a lot of these will do great over time. I definitely think Baldur's Gate does not deserve to be negative. They're amazing boxes, and you should be buying them and putting them back in your closet. They are incredibly mispriced. Streets of New Capenna, again, there's a couple cards in the set that are okay, but it's standard set, and eventually it'll rotate out. Let's see, yeah, it'll be in the block that rotates out this September, and it's going to have a long road to get back to positive. Now, again, these percentages assume you bought at original wholesale price on release day. So if you've been putting these back at, $115 for Midnight Hunt collector boxes that you can go buy them at today, then your performance will be much better now and in the future. But making these worst case assumptions and seeing what these prices have done, I think we're going to have a lot of correction ahead of us. and correction to the upside, I mean, on these that are negative when we do eventually get into a strong bull market again. Now, like I've said before, we're in the beginnings of a weak bull market and we may stay there for a while, but we see that the later collector boxes are doing well and hopefully WOTC can keep that up. If you got any questions about this, other sources of data, interesting observations, theories of your own on where these are going, or if I've missed any off the list, let me know. Thanks to everyone who makes this content possible, especially my very generous supporters on Patreon. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and join me on Final Trade.